Hey, everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comics, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in or tune in, as it might be. Again, this is another live stream that we're doing. You go around looking at the three of us. I think we've looked chipper and a little more energetic in the past. The consensus between the three of us is this was another rough week, but we're here for you, and we're here to talk about something we love, and that's comic books. I don't think there's been too much news in the past 2 weeks. Again, we did take last week off. The DC Fandom was roughly 2 weeks ago, was the past Saturday. I ended up watching everything because I'm me. The bits of news that came out, I don't think were anything earth-shattering. Some of the video game developments, the name of the Shazam film, probably the first footage from the Batman. That probably was the marquee event. But I thought it was well put together. Apart from the host, man, that was unbearable.
Who was the host?
Well, it was
an international cast. And when Aisha Taylor came on, I was just like, thank God.
Oh, yay, I love her.
But it was rough, man. The intention was great. But, whoa. There were just some people that I've said before about DC Universe and particularly the Marvel streaming site, the shows that they have on there, that there are some people that reek of failed actor. And when you get that from an international perspective, it's even more harrowing. Yeah, again, a very well-intentioned format, but these hosts were they were so annoying. Oh my God.
The great thing is the panelists and the panel, they didn't really have they had some moderators, but everybody was just so active in the discussion. You had some really good ones. I watched the conversation between Patty Jenkins and Serena Williams, which was pretty fantastic. About
and
Wonder
Patty's
Woman.
a chatterbox. Jesus. I can't imagine getting a word in with her at twice.
I could see Serena just sort of going, But it was great to hear from both of them. And Patty, of course, has some great stories too. And the Suicide Squad reveal was a lot of fun. James Gunn doing like
Squad
the big
panel itself, I thought was the most fun.
Oh yeah, everybody made fun of Michael Rooker, which was always fun. But there's some good stuff. The Boss panel. I was wondering how they were supposed to pronounce it. BAWSE, which is the Women of Color panel. That for the Arrowverse, and it was a lot of fun seeing a lot of the actors there. Thought it was great. And it's only part one, because part two, which has more of the comic, the comic news and comic panels, is the 12th, I think it was.
Yeah, whatever the Saturday is that weekend.
Yeah. So that'll be coming up next weekend. Well, now, to break it down, obviously, there was another big piece of news this past week, and that was the passing of Chadwick Boseman, the Black Panther, played Thurgood Marshall, Jackie Robinson, etc. I mean, he's really played a lot of really amazing characters and figures in his films, and obviously most well known, I think, probably internationally for Black Panther through 5 MCU movies total.
Civil War, Black Panther, Infinity War,
Endgame, and Infinity War. Yeah, so 4. I mean,
he also voiced T'Challa on a What If that hasn't aired yet.
Okay,
so I think that'll be his last one.
Which and he was recently, I think, one of his latest films that was released, I want to say it was 21 Bridges. So, obviously 2020 is a crappy year for new movies, but he did have a few films this year. Big shock, big surprise, and some really moving tributes from not just his fellow actors from the Marvel universe, which of course was really really wonderful to see them come out and support and commemorate him, but then also just a lot of people because of the characters that he's portrayed, the figures that he's portrayed in film, and just being a really great person. Apparently, he's had some really amazing interactions with people, with fans, and
did you see that video with, I think it was like Jimmy Fallon had set it up, and he's like hiding behind the red curtain, and people are walking up and seeing the poster and like saying what it meant to them, and then he comes out and surprises them, gives them a big hug. It was so beautiful. Like, I've read nothing but amazing moments, praises, sharing his like Twitter posts and private messages about just the positivity that he exuded, and he's been dealing with this for the last 4 years and just didn't like make a thing about it, so much so that, I mean, I guess like there was no doubt he was going to be in the new movie that they're, I guess, in pre-production on, so it has like thrown that into a bit of a situation, which
and it's going to be tough. Like, who can fill those shoes? To be honest, like, he really did personify the character. I think everyone, portraying him in 4 movies, with one major, film around his character, around Black Panther, it's hard to think about replacing him as having some other actors step in, but it is possible. I mean, they could do something like that, but
I think they would go more the route. I think with the few times that you have had recastings in Marvel Universe, basically because actors were pains in the ass. Yeah. So I don't see them going that route of a recasting. I imagine that they'd bring up one recast to fill that role in as the Panther persona. And it does seem like he was somebody, it seems like no one had a bad word to say about him. And just that he made 3 films while on chemo. And, I mean, that's just incredible. Also, the film that he has coming up later in the year, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, about a soul singer, a blues singer, Ma Rainey, in the 20s and 30s. And the role that he has is this real fiery cornet player, I think, either trumpet or cornet player. That's at this recording session. I actually saw the original production of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom when I was in high school on a class trip, and Ma Rainey's was Lanford Wilson's first really big success story. And I'll tell you, that's a hell of a role to go out on. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Chadwick Boseman.
Okay, so I got all the audio episodes out. That was a good thing. I was very happy to get through that. It just got to a point where, and now I have the spare time. So at one point we were talking about our favorite indie publishers, and we're not really going that route. I am, because I was talking about. We are going to talk about indie books on this particular show, and I don't think any of them are current. Brian, is yours a current book?
Sorry, I had my mute on. It is not, actually.
Okay.
Mine is a series that's a little older, but probably most people have not heard of.
Okay, so that's good. So we're kind of like taking the indie perspective from an archive sort of approach there. So there is an overlying theme. So I like overlying. I like that. It's easier to caption the show. In the show, there is. So I'm not going to break with tradition. We'll start with Steve. Burp. Steve, tell us about a book you're digging. Or you dug.
Or Doug. Like I dug this one, and I dug this one a long time ago.
We got to do our what's become a staple where we show off our shirts. So Steve, I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me give it right back to you. Just show your shirt.
Combo meal, which if you're a fan of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, it's kind of an homage to that.
Okay, Brian, how about you?
So to celebrate beer, because I've been drinking a lot, brewing it, and I'm actually attending a virtual beer tasting thing tomorrow, Saturday, whatever it is. I wore my Dogfish head, and this is the, oh gosh, which one is this? It's the one that they basically they made the art look like Johnny Cash, but then they couldn't get the estate to let him use the likeness, so they put I don't know if you can see it. They put like a Groucho Marx mustache, to like, But anyway, Dogfish Head is a fantastic beer. Their pumpkin ale just came out, so I'm in a beer celebrating spirit.
I've been to the original Dogfish.
Oh, in Rehoboth?
Rehoboth, yep.
Yeah, I've never been to that one, and it's on the list,
Okay. So my shirt, the last two shows I wore free comic book day shirts, and this will be the hat trick. And this was Mike Allred's shirt from the 15th anniversary. No real characters, just kind of analogs of characters, I think. But really nice job there from Mr. Allred. So
awesome.
That's my shirt. Okay, Steve, talk about him.
Well, talking about this book series is kind of interesting. Just to kind of set it up, it started in 1995, and took a good almost 10 years to finish. It's only 12 issues long. It started at one publisher, Kitchen Sink Press, and then of course had to switch to a new publisher once Kitchen Sink was gone, and that was Fantagraphics Books. And just in general, talking about Fantagraphics Books, Fantagraphics has really been one of my favorite publishers for a long time, putting out and exposing me to a lot of really great artists and writers and titles that I probably wouldn't have seen otherwise. I used to love getting their, the actual catalog and just flipping through it and basically circling everything that I knew I could definitely not afford because they were not cheap. But I think, of all the different titles and properties that Fantagraphics has put out over the years, since the 70s, I think that this particular title, Black Hole, is one of my favorites, and I think one of the really great projects that in its completion is a gorgeous work of art overall. So this was Black Hole is written and drawn by Charles Burns. And again, it started in 1995. He finished it, I believe, in 2005, and was putting it out in single issues. It was collected, and I think, Brian, you've got a copy of the collected edition. It was put out by Pantheon Books back in 2005, 2006, and that's gorgeous too. But it is a thick tome, and it's a thick series too. I interestingly enough, I started reading this in early 2000 and bought it all in singles. So I got floppies. And basically, all the issues that I have are the Fantagraphics printings. So like the first 4 or 5 issues are like second or third printings or something. But everything after that is all first printing. And it's fun to have these because they're, for a while, like they were pretty hard to get a hold of. And it's just gorgeous. The design of each book is pretty similar, starting off with like a front and back design, all of course designed by Charles Burns. The inside covers are completely detailed and drawn, different sort of plant life or other scenes, and then of course the interiors are all black and white ink. Hand drawn and just extremely gorgeous. The contrast between the just the shadows and everything, thick dark lines. It's fantastic art. And if you're a fan of Charles Burns or his art, you'll definitely see just just a stunning example of his artistic ability here.
They kind of remind me, like the storytelling and some of the art reminds me of Tom of Finland. And admittedly, I have been steeping myself in Tom of Finland as of late, so that may play a role. But just flipping back through, and I think partly it's the way he does shading, and partly the sort of black and white, aesthetic. But even in some of the faces, there's like this roundedness that reminds me of Tom's stuff and Gilbert Hernandez.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm seeing that more.
There's a lot of influence. There's definitely a lot of influence from other, artists and creators from the 70s and 80s in the style. But it's just it is such a fantastic study in character. So just to let you know what it's about. Basically, it takes place in the mid to late 70s and centers around a lot of a group of teenagers, students at a particular high school, and through the narration, there's a lot of first-person narration in here, and it jumps around from a couple of different characters. You learn about this sexually transmitted disease that is being passed around from some students to other students, obviously through what high school kids do. But unlike other sexually transmitted diseases, this is very gruesome. It's gross. It's not, a nasty discharge of you taking care of penicillin. This is something where the students or the teenagers are mutating into just disgusting or very bizarre or strange creatures, more or less. And at the beginning, and this is also part of the format of the book, at the beginning of every issue, there's a what looks like almost a yearbook picture side by side with what they used to look like and the design of what they look like now after being affected by the disease. And there's all sorts of things. You have kids who grow tails, kids whose skin tear off completely. You have kids who have giant bulbous warts all over their faces, or just, an extra mouth in their neck, like all sorts of really disgusting, strange things. And so some, of course, can't be in public anymore, and they go off and leave the woods. And all through this, there's another high school student that's kind of one of the focuses, Keith, who has a crush on one of the infected girls, Chris. And, through his eyes, you see sort of the malaise of these high school teenagers. You also see, his wants and desires for Chris, knowing full well that she's infected with this horrible disease. And of course, these kids, it's all an allegory for just you can read teen pregnancy into it. You could read standard STIs, and the infection and the gossip and the ostracization and slut shaming and all sorts of stuff that goes on in in real life without the tails or the bizarre faces and 20 eyes or whatever that comes with this disease. And there's a lot of very frank drug use, a lot of drinking, a lot of sex and nudity in this. And Charles Burns, I think, with this design, it's very respectful but also very shocking in parts. And the story itself has some very violent moments, but also has some very sweet moments. So I think if to recommend this to people, I really do recommend to read it all in one go if you can. Because the entire story itself is just so fantastic. And the fact that it took 10 years to write and complete, you almost can't really tell. There's not a lot of change, I should say, between like the first issue and the last issue in the way things are designed. So I think you did a great job of keeping that cohesive style all the way through, even though it took them so long to finish. But Black Hole, if you can find a copy, Pantheon, like I said, Pantheon Books has the collected edition that Brian has, or if you can find it in singles. I mean, some people just love the aesthetic appeal of having a single floppy in their hands. They're all gorgeous. They're all, incredible if you can find them. wonderful, although they are kind of probably hard to get now in floppy copies, but I'm sure you can find them on eBay or something.
Yeah, I'm just going to interject here. It's also not the easiest thing to get this digitally right now.
Really?
In English, the foreign editions are available, but apparently there's a change over in who's going to distribute it. So there's a couple of months that we're experiencing right now where it's on moratorium. It'll eventually be available again from what I've just read. But right now in Comixology, the only thing that you can get is the
well,
French
if you can
version.
read French, definitely go for it. But otherwise, I do like sort of having something physical to hold on to when it comes to something like this, just because it's they're so unique and very interesting. And just a little side note about it, this series, this project has been optioned or shopped around so many times for the past 15 years to be adapted into a film, and it's come close a couple times. There's actually a short film out there on YouTube with sort of like a scene treatment by director Rupert Sanders. And it's just a short sort of like 12-minute scene taken out of Black Hole, but with actors in makeup and just looking pretty interesting. And then I think the last thing I read about it was that Brad Pitt's company, Plan B, optioned it back in 2018. So it's recent enough that they've started working on it, but who knows if that's going to go anywhere. I mean, Sandman lasted in development hell for almost 20 years, so.
Yeah, what's we three at this point? It's a pretty long time for that one as well. I'd be interested to see where this goes. I read the first 4 issues and never picked up, and not because I didn't enjoy it, but the breaks in the action in terms of the publishing schedule kind of take you out of the loop. And I thought, well, I'll wait for the collected, and I just never gotten to it. But I do think at some point I'm going to move on that. Also, if anyone's familiar with the band Silver Sun Pickups, they have a great song called "The Pit," which is about some of the events in Black Hole.
There you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was lucky when I found the Black Hole. It was really early 2000s, and at that point, Fantagraphics and Charles Burns were putting it out pretty regularly. So the last several issues, were pretty quick. You didn't have like a 2-year wait between.
And I do think I know my first issue is like a 3rd printing or something. So I did think that they kept, much like Love and Rocket. Like I always see this as kind of if Love and Rockets was like the older brother. That they did keep stuff in print.
They for sure. I mean, I think my first, like I said, my first issue I think is a 3rd printing, and 2 through 5 are 2nd printings. So it's pretty hard to come by if you're looking for first printings, but otherwise you can probably find something on eBay.
And see Brian's collected copy there.
Yeah. It is gorgeous. It's a gorgeous copy.
I wonder if one of the plans now, since there's so many projects that start as in film development, end up as either limited or ongoing TV series. I mean, this is a show I definitely think could work on episodic television. Very limited. Because I'd hate to see what they would cut out. It's one of those things where I feel I hate to see what they would trim just for a 2.5-hour film.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens in this, and a lot of feels. And I didn't grow up in the 70s, so I don't have as much connection to sort of like that type of culture, where these kids are all like 16, 17, getting massively high, dropping acid, drinking all the time. Up in the woods. Like I didn't have that experience, but I do know that there are plenty of people out there that did. Charles Burns probably had something similar to that, or at least grew up in that kind of environment. But you can feel it. These kids, the way that he paints these kids and writes the stories and emotions that they have, it's very relatable, very real, even with the bizarre mutations.
We had our buddy Jim Figueredo comment in here. Has not read it yet, but it's on his list, his wish list. But his favorite, Big Baby, came out in Brazil last year and got a lot of good attention in Brazil. So I think I started. He did EXO, or what's that weird with the bugs? I had it in the hardcover, oversized, and I did not like it. I think that
it's
yeah.
I've got a couple of, like, El Borba, I think he did, was one of his. That's a really interesting, bizarre.
Yeah, it looks like that was
called Detective.
Brian, it looks like that was called X'd Out.
X'd Out, thank you. Yeah, that was one of the books that didn't make the cut, and now, of course, I'll probably go back and be like, oh, I really want to read that. But I did keep this because obviously this is certainly one of those pieces that's just so amazing. I don't remember much about it. Like, Steve, your recap is perfect because I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. There's like an STD kind of thing, and they grew a tail and mutated. Yeah, it was.
Oh, and there's also a subplot with some of these kids going missing or being murdered. There's a lot of really interesting side stories about this, about class, about it's very chock full of stuff. So that's why I do recommend, if you do read it, do find it, try to read it all in one sitting, because it's a lot, but it's good.
Yeah, and you've motivated me. I've got to get it now. I've got to get it.
Yeah.
All right. So seeing there's some other people on. Hi, James. Hi, another James. Hi, David. Just saying hi to people streaming with us. Go over to Brian. Brian, tell us about something you're reading or read.
So I have been sort of getting interested in like just random indie self-published stuff lately. Partly because I'm doing this kind of interview series over with Flame On, so I'm like kind of like reaching out to different creators and having creators reach out. Anyway, so I've been doing this whole like exploration, and had this guy reach out to me, Stefan Cote. I think that's how you say it. Actually, Steve, you might know. He's from Montreal. If it's Cote, is it Cote or Cote?
Cote to Cote. If there's no accent on the E.
There's an accent on the E, so Cote?
Oh, Cote, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, reached out and sent me some review copies of his Phantasmagoria series, which I'm going to do a little screen share thing here. Show you this. So it is self-published. This is, I believe, his character Jezebel from this world that he has built in and around post-apocalyptic Montreal. And Canada is a country that I have a lot of esteem for, especially because I am a curler and also love things like Letterkenny and poutine. And Canada's Drag Race. So, which, living now in Seattle, I'm a lot closer, and I hope someday to actually cross the border and visit this magical land. But I'm very little knowledge other than that about Canadian culture, and to my detriment, and I'm trying to fix that. But this is fantastic. This is a very creative, multimodal comic. He actually has music that accompanies the comic. So every now and again, there's a page that you encounter that actually. Go listen to this track, and it like kind of gives you the musical inspiration, and also in some cases the actual songs that he's depicting, not unlike a music video or a rock opera kind of approach. But it is set in post-apocalyptic Montreal. Basically, the bombs have gone off with Russia, because he wrote this in like the late '90s, and then kind of like set it aside for a while and eventually self-published published it. And he is the cartoonist, writer, illustrator, colors, everything is him. So it is a labor of love, to be sure. But I'm captivated by the world he's built. It's very it reminds me of an idea I had that I haven't explored too much yet, but it's like this idea that if you had like this refuge in an apocalypse that kind of brought all of these queer and straight and just whoever together, and they kind of had like an orgy, off and on, not consistently, but like surrounded themselves among people that they wanted to spend the rest of the world with, also to kind of have this like sanctuary against the dark, which post-apocalyptic, you got the tropes of like zombies and the sort of nomadic Mad Max kind of warriors or people out there trying to kill you, bandits, like whatever. But it's run by this chick Jezebel, who's from this oh gosh, what's it called, Whittinsons. It's like a family in Canada that runs like their drugstore and supermarket and all these chains. And so she's kind of like built this little adult theme park around her and sort of taking it on, and that's the sanctuary. So you have this really like young gay man who just gets separated from his partner. His name's Fele, and he gets separated from Pierre, his boyfriend, during the as the bombs are going off, and he ends up kind of getting mixed up with this group and sort of has these adventures and finds this motley crew of these this hulking tattooed bouncer character. There is this muscular if I can find a screenshot of this muscular guy who looks kind of like Satan. I mean, basically.
Look at it be Satan.
But I love that he's also doing this, and I'm going to actually interview him in a few weeks. So I'll ask him. But he does this thing where he has like little one-shot commercials. And then he does also some sort of story setup, but he also jumps around in his story and his settings and his style. So whereas he has this sort of impressionistic, watercolory kind of thing, which is the apocalypse period, he also then will go into this sort of sketchy. Trying to find a page here. I'm sorry. He sent me an EPUB, so I'm it's kind of a little different. So the Whittenworth. Sorry, the Whittenworth is the family. So he jumps back and kind of tells their story a little bit pre-apocalypse. But yeah, you have these ads here, like this is for Bedside Manor, which is one of I think it's like the hotel in this compound of other sort of festivities, including the Satan guy. But it's just so interesting and like rich. Sorry, I actually have like a mission to not say interesting. It's rich and colorful. It has unique characters that are coming out. You don't quite know their motivations in the first volume. Everyone is sort of kind of feeling out our protagonist, Fele, and really trying to understand, like, what his agenda is. Are they just going to take him on? And I don't think it goes that far. Are they going to, like, give him a chance? Does he want to be a part of this world? So it's all of that. And the will they won't they, the hunk character, I believe his name's Obsidian, like he's a big like part of this, and there's a will they won't they with that, but of course he wants to get back. Fele wants to get back to his boyfriend and find him, so there's a lot of that going on too. But I was really captured by the uniqueness, and being self-published. It's a lot for any one person to take on. Stefan seems to have done all of it himself. And I really want to see there's like 8 volumes of this. He's been writing this now for a while. I think since like the early 2010s, he's kept publishing this. I really want to see how he develops as a cartoonist. Because you definitely see some, early kind of writing and craft things that you would see evolve over time. But the world is fascinating. I'm really interested, not just because it's Canada, but also because it's post-apocalyptic, which right now seems a little timely, and unfortunately so. How are we all adjusting in this world that we're in, and seeing other fictional pieces about how people would adjust, choices they'd make, all that stuff is kind of interesting to compare. So if you're interested, again, it's called Phantasmagoria. It's self-published. I'll post a link in the comments to his website, so you can contact him. And again, all of the music that is referred to is also on the website. So you get the book from him, and then you can also just listen to the tracks, and it works well. It's really cool. Another touchstone would be like Repo Genetic Opera, because again, post-apocalyptic rock opera, really. And I'm sure this is like a whole genre, so there's probably a bunch more I just don't have top of my head. But I don't know. I think you guys would enjoy this. I'd be interested to see what you thought. But yeah, have you guys anybody heard of this before? I mean, this is the first time I had heard
never
of it.
heard
right?
of it.
So
no, that's pretty cool though.
We'll get Stefan on Flame On, and then if he really wants to, maybe we can drag him over here and see what else he's done. He's got another couple series that are out, but yeah, that's Phantasmagoria by Stefan
awesome.
Cote.
All right, awesome.
One of the things that I noticed in Montreal is that they do have a pretty active zine community, or had it in like the 90s and the 2000s.
They always did.
Comics were
did.
Oh yeah,
and the music scenes they were fantastic.
Oh yeah, music. Yeah.
I mean, probably the biggest exponent of that is Vice. Yeah.
I mean that's where Vice really came from. So, but the French comic scene there is fantastic. Of course, when you're there, you can get a lot of European imports as well, pretty easily, as opposed to most of the U.S. where we're kind of, if you find a Bayday, a store that sells Baydays, they're like insanely expensive, and they don't have a big selection. But in Montreal, it's just a really great, confluence of cultures up there, so you can really find a lot of cool stuff. So this sounds pretty awesome.
Okay. Well, I guess we're over to me. Now, when we were originally talking about specifically doing an indie show, one thing that I thought maybe we could put together was talking about our favorite indie publishers. And that just didn't really happen, but that was where my framework was. So, little history lesson about me. When I was growing up as a kid, there wasn't any such thing as indie publishers. They just didn't exist. Once I finished my initial run as a comic fan, which basically came to a dead stop at the end of 1980, there were a couple things that were out there, like The First Kingdom by Jack Katz and Cerebus. And, Cerebus and a 12-year-old, they're not exactly gonna mesh. So there wasn't really a lot of appreciation for what was out there at the time. And, naturally things like the underground comics with an X, that may as well have been published on another planet for where I was. And then when I got back into comics in early 1985, there was this independent boom in the 80s. And I would sample stuff, and nothing really connected with me initially. And these turned out to be very good books, things like Love and Rockets, things like, which I eventually did fall in love with, American Flag, Chaykin's ongoing series, and probably the most successful out of all those Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And though I sampled, there wasn't anything that connected with me until Mage. And Mage was written and drawn by Matt Wagner, and the publisher was Kimiko. And Kimiko was a very strong publisher through the 80s. It had some really good stuff. They had ongoing adaptations that would take some liberties of the Robotech series. So there actually is a comic book for every episode of Robotech. And another series that was an adaptation that they had was Johnny Quest, based on the 60s Hanna-Barbera series, which was really well done. There are a couple of issues, one about Johnny's mother's death and another one about a pre-Michael Vick sort of dog napping ring that engages Bandit, that anyone except for people without a heart like Steve would certainly be crying when you read these stories. I know. I'm just kidding.
I cry at freaking Hallmark commercials. Come on.
It's called Arise.
She's giving him a car because she thinks he's a good teacher.
And you also had some other series, the unfortunately out of print Elementals by Bill Willingham, which had a very lengthy run through there. So not just the book Mage, but the publisher itself. There was a lot of things that I enjoyed about Kimiko. What predated Mage, though, and here I actually have some Kimiko books of the Mage book, which were really early collected editions, and they're not even the same size. It's weird. Um, when you had collecting editions, people didn't know what to do when collected editions start. And of course, I have my little to bills from Matt Wagner. You'll see that there. What predated Mage, though, was his series Grendel. And there have been many incarnations of Grendel in the last, at this point, I think 27 years. I think Grendel started either 82 or 83. And the initial 3 issues of Grendel and the first appearance of Grendel in Kimiko Primer, which was their anthology series that also spawned the Max, they're very expensive. Those 3 issues, and particularly the Kimiko Primer, you're not going to find a copy of those for less than 100 unless it's patterned. So a couple years ago, Grendel eventually found a home at Dark Horse, and they put out the Grendel Archives. And I reread this, first of all, because it's a very fast read, but also just to, again, it had Kimiko on the mind, and just as a refresher. And what you have here is kind of like a dry run of the story. And if you'll see here, these are black and white interiors. And it's pretty rudimentary art. It's not known for the eventual stylization that Wagner came to be known for. And I kind of liken this to music. When I discover a new band, I get really into a track. The next thing I want to do is hear what their first recordings were like. I always want to go to the beginning to see where the band came from. Sometimes you see that a band that had a remarkably well set vision of themselves from the beginning and don't really stray too far from there. And then other times you see like an incredible evolution from their initial touch points. And I kind of liken that to this. Now, what's here was retold in a much more palatable framework in a backup series in Mage that was eventually collected called Grendel Devil by the Deed, which is how most people came to initially know Grendel. But again, these hard to find issues collected in this, and it's kind of like a dry run. If you're unfamiliar with the Grendel story, I'm not going to go because there's a Grendel Prime and Christine Spar and Brian, and there's a lot of Grendels. But the initial Grendel that we came to know was Hunter Rose, who was a very successful novelist by day and an assassin by night, and eventually comes to a very prominent position in organized crime in New York City. He is chased at various points by Argent the Wolf, who's sort of like a wolf man. They never really get into that. But you also see a humanity to somebody who's effectively a monster. One of the people that's killed in one of his campaigns is a mobster named Palumbo, and leaves his young daughter Stacy orphaned, and Hunter becomes her surrogate father. And not so much that you get this here, because again, like I said, it's like a dry run. It's like a demo. What Devil by the Deed eventually gets into is in a much more potent way than this does, is explorations of what evil is, and people that we would conceive, that we would perceive as evil. Is that what they actually are, or is that the only thing that defines them? Again, as I said, there's like amazing Grendel stories that have come, space Grendels. There's a lot of derivatives from this. Actually, my favorite Grendel is the Christine Spar version of Grendel. Christine Spar was a novelist and the biographer eventually of Hunter Rose after he had been killed, and that was one of the most potent female characters I had read at that point in 1986. Again, Matt's been a favorite, and I also love that I have Grendel drawing in here from him. So I almost would suggest people go to other materials like the Grendel Omnibus, the first one has a lot of good stuff. Like I said, Devil by the Deed from the Mage backups, and the entire Christine Spar arc from the first 12 issues of the Grendel ongoing series. But if you dig that and you want to see where things came from, I'm very glad that this exists and makes them really hard to find affordable. When last I saw it was still in print from Dark Horse. I always get worried with the hardbacks, But that's the book I've talked about. And have any of you guys ever read Major Grendel?
None.
Huh.
It's really something that I don't know why. I think I read like Grendel like way back, like a one-off issue.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Kevin shared his favorite is Batman versus Grendel, which
as a crossover, it isn't
might
bad.
have been the one
it's
I read.
not bad at all. Yeah.
But I don't think it grabbed me enough to like go, oh, you need to go check the rest of this out. But I know you've talked so highly of Mage and that, and I want to see the new Mage series he did not long ago, because iFanboy had covered that pretty well, and it sounds like he really just carried that story forward, kind of with his own life progression, and it sounds amazing. So I need to check those out.
Grendel's one of those things like it's such an iconic character, and that reading comics in the early 90s, like you couldn't help but be aware of Grendel.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of, Grendel would pop up. You would see him in posters and t-shirts. You'd see him in the crossovers. I think Image, were there a couple Image crossovers like Grendel and Spawn or something? I want to say there was a Grendel something that was, with Image, but Grendel and Batman, did see that. But it was just something as a character I just wasn't as drawn to, sort of like the assassin type that I was to other characters. And I did read a lot of
crossed over with the Shadow.
The Shadow.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't see Image otherwise.
Because I know that the companies were kind of all crossing over, trying to do that sort of cross character pollination.
A couple of years ago, there was a comic called War of the Independents that kind of brought all the independent characters as they could muster together. And Wagner wouldn't let Mage go because, he effectively is Mage. He effectively is Kevin Master. But Grendel, he was like, have fun. so
have a Grendel. You get a Grendel. And you get
when the dust settled with Kamiko's bankruptcy, he was eventually able to retain Grendel and Mage found a home at Image, and Grendel found a home at Dark Horse.
Mm-hmm.
And that Batman Grendel, I believe that was completed like 2.5 years before it was actually released.
Wow, really?
There were so many things up in the air. So.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. And if
you do go Grendel, don't go here first. Don't go here first. Go somewhere else, and then come back to this for the fun.
That's good.
And
that's good to know.
Those Dark Horse omnibus books, which are small, I have to go over there to grab them. But also there was like a ton of Star Wars that they did in that same format. There's Buffy in that format. I know some people really go for different kinds of shelf porn, but there was also something very appealing of having so many stories at your fingertips, because they're usually like 600 pages. Those books. Yeah.
Just a few pages, just to flip through.
Well, I hope you guys eventually do sample some, particularly at least the first Mage series, and read it in the context of the time that it came out. Because, like I said, there wasn't any independent book when I first got back into reading comics. It was really grabbing me. And I guess Mage was superhero enough that there was because again, it's a modern day take on Arthurian legend. So there was enough heroic stuff there to grab me on a very superficial basis. And when you get into it, and the romance aspect, and the, basically coming of age as an adult coming of age, there's a lot there. So I hope you guys sample that.
Yeah, it'd be a good episode, like for us to just do a deep dive on one of them. I'll read it.
Or maybe Grendel, Devil in the D, because that's like only 48 pages, and that also makes some really brave artistic choices. And there's sequences where there's certainly Frank Miller was an influence, and it kind of takes some of those tropes but remixes them in a different fashion. And there's some pages are explosions of color and red, and you don't really see that with Miller. So maybe that might be the one to tackle. But I also absolutely love the Christine Spar, which had the art by the Pander brothers. That was always at the top of my stack every month as that came out. And think of DC in 1986 and having that to compete with. So that it still stayed at that top level. That I think that's some testimony to how much it happened. So
cool.
Okay, so is there anything else you guys want to talk about? I have no objections to making this as you can see from the morning.
We've all had such a weird, long, horrible week.
Yeah. And it's not over yet, but
the one surprise is they emailed us tonight and said, take tomorrow off.
Really? Oh, excellent. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were expecting maybe a half day. There's some bookkeeping stuff I still have to do.
That's the thing about people who are working from home now. It's you take a day off, but you're still at home, and so you're kind of I should check my email. I know, Bill. I know you were doing this, and I was doing this. Steve,
last Friday, I was
too. It's
I was just I can't not do it.
You're right.
When other people are working, I can't not do it.
And that's it. I did the same thing because I was off for 3 days last week, I think it was. And every day I was going through and clearing some emails. Mm-hmm. So I knew that I wouldn't have as many to come back to.
Yep.
But you're still doing them.
Still
reading them.
And it draws you in because then you're not just okay. But no, you're I got to respond.
I could just answer that. I could just take
care of this. They just need this. Okay, I can do that. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working from home for the past since 2017, and I've tried to be good, but obviously since this year it's just been so much harder because now everybody's in the same position in my company, and so we're all kind of doing the things that you probably shouldn't be doing, i.e. checking your emails all the time, which means that you have to then respond to emails from people who are also checking and responding to emails at 11 o'clock at night or on a Saturday afternoon or just doing all these things.
Checking emails at odd times and also taking meetings from your bathtub. I'm just saying both
I haven't done that.
Well, I'm not saying I've done that.
Doing that. I can't conceive of doing that.
But I mean, you could.
Well, I mean, just depends on how big that bath bomb is.
I'm sorry,
it's just too comfortable in here.
I will say though that there have been a lot of conference calls that I don't even put the dignity of shorts on.
No, right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I had training today, and it was Microsoft Teams. There was no telephone or camera, microphone. It was all one way. Mm-hmm. And we're just sitting there listening, and occasionally slides. I'm I'm gonna lay down on my couch. I'm just going to, passively engage in this training. And it worked, and it does the thing. But, other meetings, you can't do that. But it's changing the very nature of our jobs in such a profound way that I think potentially after this is over, when we look back, we're going to just be wait a minute, what did we used to do? How did this work?
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard for some people to to get out of this way of living. It's anyway, fascinating times as thing says. But.
I did the counts today, and I am 182 days since I've had an alcoholic drink.
Congratulations.
And 172 days since I've worn dress pants.
That is an odd correlation, but not causation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know that
Yeah, I
there's
think
been
it
a
has been.
day that I have not had an alcoholic drink in the last 6 months. It's bad. Like, and I'm not drinking like to the point of being drunk,
Yeah.
but at the same time, there's this like, well, what else am I gonna do? I might as well have a drink. It's you know, it's a yeah. So anyway, I appreciate your diligence, Bill. This is very
Yeah.
good exercise in restraint.
Well, I don't drink at home to begin with, you know, so
Yeah.
I didn't used to. Well, that's not true.
I know some people.
But like, I would drink when I would go out to the bars
Yeah.
or go out to a restaurant. Like, that was a social thing. But like, we don't have that now. We have no social things if you're being good. And I know a lot of my friends and even some of my family, they're not being good. They're doing things, and I'm just like, come on.
Yeah.
Don't come visit for 2 weeks after that.
Oh, my
Hotel
family's-
rooms, though, I would drink, though.
Oh, hotel rooms. Well, yeah.
Hotel rooms, I would. Yeah.
But that's even worse
Gotta hit
because
that
then you're
minibar.
then you're most likely by yourself drinking, and that's like, I don't know, that like, I'm okay drinking with my boyfriend around, or you know, but when you're really just by yourself and you're pounding them down,
Mm-hmm.
that's where it gets that's where you get Bob Fosse. Like, I just watched Fosse Vernon, and I'm looking at like Bob's life as a bachelor, not always, in his little tiny apartment in New York, and I'm just like, cautionary tale. I mean,
You too might end up massively wasted and also a celebrated.
Well, with this whole
Choreographer.
pandemic viewing, you know, I know for me, the thing I never thought I was going to take to fall into was Dark Shadows. You know, it's stupid to make a choice to start watching a series where there's over 1,000 episodes. That's just dumb. And I got swept in.
I'm amazed.
I mean,
I'm so amazed.
It's a soap opera thing.
242 episodes in.
So has Barnabas showed up yet?
Yes, Barnabas
Okay.
has showed up, and it's the first arc with him and Maggie as Cosette.
Because
Or just
everybody,
but is
they
it in
all-
color yet?
No, I'm about like 55 episodes away from color, or at
It's-
least color that survives.
It's fascinating
Yeah.
to me because one of my exes, my first boyfriend actually, was a huge Dark Shadows fan, but even he only really cared about the ones that like were later, not the you know, when they relaunched it, but like even the original. But when Barnabas showed up, so it's fascinating that you are really going like the full, like you're just doing it, and that's so cool because
I've heard different things. I've heard different things. I've heard people that that feel that the show doesn't really get going until Barnabas and Dr. Hoffman come on the scene, and there's other people that feel like Barnabas was like Elmo, that it was kind of one show at the beginning, and then when he came in, it certainly became more popular, but it took some of the elements away that made them fans of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the writing is so inconsistent. It's oh my God, you'll have like one episode where everything there's always a beginning sequence where later on, as the show goes on, later on, characters other than Victoria Winters do the voiceover, but initially it's all Victoria Winters, and the writing on some of those intros it's poetry. And then you get into the episode, and it's soap opera language.
Yeah.
So but it has me hooked like you wouldn't believe.
You should
Every day I watch at least one episode.
You should finish this, and then I want you to go watch Doctor Who from the beginning. Because
I tried. I mean, some of those later Hartnell episodes, they're rough, man.
Oh,
they're rough to get through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Troughton and Hartnell are hard to get through.
Wait.
Pertwee.
I will agree with Hartnell, but I will not agree that Troughton's stuff is bad. He is.
I'm not a fan of Troughton stuff.
I don't know who you are anymore. Like, this is insane to me. Like, there are rough
But I like
episodes.
Pertwee.
I love
Pertwee
even rough
and his
parts.
weird little lisp.
Yeah,
It's
my
made me
favorite's
happy.
Pertwee.
In fact,
He's my
Pertwee,
favorite.
and he was so
but-
pissed off at everybody.
but-
He hated
Yeah.
everybody.
So with Doctor Who, they didn't just drop in this whole new like Elmo-like character. They just reinvented the Doctor as a judo secret agent action hero in Pertwee, And that transformed the show. And a lot of people I know who are old Doctor Who fans go,
Yeah.
"Oh, that was when I just didn't like it anymore. It wasn't serious. It was because
it was the Avengers.
It was the Avengers, exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, it's fascinating with these long running shows. Soap operas are like this. If you talk to people who watch, what's the hospital? General Hospital.
General Hospital.
Or any of these, like they're just same thing. There's these generational, like, oh no, they added so and so, and the whole thing fell apart. It's fascinating.
And see, things like that, like I know that I'm not alone here, but a lot of kids, I would come home from school. My mom would be, my mom was a stay-at-home mom for most of the time when I was a kid, and then went back to work when I was in high school. But when I was a little kid, I would come home and she'd be watching General Hospital, because it was at that time like 3 to 4 o'clock was General Hospital when I was growing up. And so, I'd be home at that time, we'd be watching it together because I wasn't allowed to watch anything else. It was her show. And it was funny, like you get to know these characters, you get to know these actors, and then if you catch it 20, 30 years later and you see the same people that are like, how, wow.
Did you know
that's
that
good.
The Mad Scientist in UHF, the Weird Al Yankovic movie, is one of those General Hospital?
That's Luke.
That's Luke, yeah.
It's Luke from Luke and Laura.
So my more previous ex, Pat, actually watched General Hospital, and probably still to this day watches it. And I watched some of it because he was watching it, and I'm like, wait a minute. And it was like one of those weird moments when you're like, that's so-and-so. And then other random people who you've seen in other things from Broadway or movies show up, and you're like, what are they doing here?
Well, because I was watching General Hospital with my mom when Luke and Laura came back, when Scorpio was on with Anna, and when Sunny was first really taken off and being like a big central character. And I forget the blonde that Sunny was with, but then, everything blew up every once in a while. Like, it was just, the whole show is crazy. Everything about soap operas is crazy. But it's very much like that bubble that you walk
like comic
into.
Books?
Because comic books are very much the same way.
We are not being intellectually honest if we do not point out that comic books, and I'm talking Marvel, DC, like long term, it is absolutely the same as what we are talking about. So in that there are these bubbles that is us. That is what we are, and we are part of. So I just want to be very honest about that.
And
but
it's
when
all
you
about
talk about
when you get in,
when you talk about the specific soap opera insanity, one of the tropes that is basically followed every soap opera is these characters growing up overnight. And my favorite story about that was when I was born, there was a character on the guiding light that was born around the same time. And both my mother and father had the flu when I was like 15. So they were home and they decided, let's watch Guiding Light. And that character, now mind you, at that point I'm 15 years old. That character was like 37. He'd killed a couple people. He had like 2 kids. He was running for mayor. So.
Or the ones that stay kids for way too long, and because they kept to keep replacing the cast member because they keep getting too old. Yeah. Or my favorites, like the part of so-and-so will now be played by Jensen Ackles, or, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And then some, change, over time. There was a soap opera called The Edge of Night, which was always a bit more darker because it was basically centralized around a police station. And I watched some episodes from the 1950s, and they're like crime noir. And it was amazing they did this on a daily basis. Then you get to the 80s, and it's like, tits and ass. It's something very, very different.
And we all,
80s.
and as everyone knows, here at Comic Book Bears, we love tits and ass.
Next week, Zenoscope Press.
Next week, tarot, nothing
tarot.
but tarot, and Black Rose.
Listen, I am the one reading. I am the one reading Sunstone here, and plan to talk about it again. So I'm just saying.
Hey, I love Faithless. Faithless, I am 100% on board with Faithless, and that is a lot of, it's a lot of lady sex. So it's very, very queer positive, very wonderful book.
Yes,
that I also
We're
recommend.
talking about something different. Top Cow, right? David Toby just chimed in.
Yep.
Yes.
Top
Yeah.
Girl!
I got a few comments here. People have been making back to our drinking, day drinking or meetings and whatever. David
Yes.
says, for me anyway, having to wear a suit makes me want to drink. Of course. Wait a minute. Hold on. I just missed this. Jack's saying I'm drunk. Let me just point out that I am not drunk. But this is, hold on. This is a 10% alcoholic percent ABV beer. So you're probably not wrong that I'm on my way. So I'm just saying.
I might have to chime in, but I have a particular wolf of the week, but I don't know if somebody else has it too. So I may follow up on that, Brian, with something related.
Now it's a mystery. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then of course, Jim had the same thought that I did. Very close to what I did.
The absolutely greatest injection into
Vindication
comic books
James.
was Stanley making soap opera-ish elements.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, it is, and it's you get the same type of tropes, obviously on a very different scale. Where you have characters who die and come back from the dead, characters who get severely injured and they wake up looking completely different and or having a different personality. And that's something that happens in comics and soap operas.
Well, it's beyond just that. It's serialized storytelling in general. And so you go back even through the pulp era. You go back even to like Charles Dickens, like serialized storytelling. Whenever it probably did predate Dickens, but Dickens is the first one I can think of.
Yeah.
Like that is a transformative moment in storytelling. So much so that like TV now, like people don't want the done and ones. They want the serialized storytelling. Erotica. Like I'm learning more about that world, and like that is all about serialized storytelling. They don't want just a quickie like book that just whatever sex whatever. They want a story. They want a serialized story where characters grow and develop, and it makes sense.
Well, and it works in porn as well. I mean, if you have Dawson's 20 load weekend, you've got to watch Dawson's 30 load weekend, and then to top it all off, the 40 load weekend, because you really want to see the growth of this character.
There's an arc
over time.
Wait, you don't see the growth of this character every time they
Well, you see. Sure. Well, I mean, he kind of maintains a lot. So there's a lot.
So
and
David
Holmes came back from the dead.
David's got some great insights, of course. Conan Doyle.
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 Jesus. Sherlock Holmes coming back from the dead. There were bricks thrown through windows over that particular controversy. From fans. I guess
that was really me.
Changed. Yeah.
The original Trolls.
That was me. Yeah. How dare you, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle? You are a garbage human being. You've ruined this character. This is not the character of my youth.
Speaking of ruining Sherlock, have you guys seen the trailer for Enola Holmes? Enola Holmes.
Enola Holmes. I'm so excited for it. I am all in.
So you want to know something really funny about that? I've never been
a Sherlock Holmes person.
I love Sherlock.
Any format, it never connected with me.
Hey, Henry Cavill is Sherlock in this series. I mean, he's the side character, but my Henry.
This is the first book that the first book I ever owned. Actually, my grandmother got me this, and it is the entirety of Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes series, and I've read all of it. But on top of that, every incarnation, whether it be Robert Downey Jr. doing this very rock star, weird whatever, or even most recently Stephen Moffat's and Mark Gaddis's fantastic BBC reinvention of Sherlock. Even the Rathbone and just all the various, like, they're all fantastic. But let me tell you a funny story. The writers group that I also was part of and my boyfriend introduced me to in Orlando, the writer of the Enola Holmes series is in that writers group. She workshopped some of her material in that writers group in Orlando.
Ooh.
And like now she's sold this whole thing and they're making it, and it looks ridiculous, but I'm on board. Millie Bobby?
Yeah, Millie Bobby Brown.
6?
Yep.
11. 7.
She's
one
the
of those
kid,
numbers.
She's Sherlock and Mycroft's kid sister. Helena Bonham Carter, like you
plays
said,
the mother.
Is the mother. Yeah, Cavill's in it as Sherlock. Like it looks fun.
But it's another actor. But yeah,
it's coming out on Netflix. It's gonna be interesting. I'm gonna watch it just because of the weird connection.
I did Did Gaddis have a Sherlock documentary as a companion to the horror documentary series?
I'm sure he
that
did,
horror documentary series is fantastic.
Oh, it is. But he also did a companion documentary series to Dracula from the other year.
That might be
as well. Because he's done a lot of that because of course, writing, directing, acting, whatever, he does it all.
He is doing for the BBC, it's not BBC, but the British radio teleplay series, Big Finish. The company that does like a lot of Doctor Who stuff
and Dark Shadows.
Right? He is doing a Dracula compendiums or companion like sequel series. I think he voices Dracula. Like it's a whole thing. So yeah, if you're interested in that, go look up Big Finish and Mark Gatiss and Dracula. And I haven't heard it yet, but it's on my list. So
cool.
And the Dracula series that they did, Mark Gatiss and Moffat, also I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was I think on Netflix for us.
Yeah, it was. I want to say it was BBC in the UK and then Netflix here.
Very modern, very like in that same kind of Sherlock, reinvent from a postmodern whatever. But it was good. I liked it.
All right. Well, we're hitting the 10:45 mark almost, so maybe we should move over to the Woofs of the Week and start wrapping this up. So, as I said, previewed. When we do wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears Up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. And that's where we signify something, and it might be a comic book, might be a film, charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your Woof of the Week?
Well, I have two, and really quickly for the first one, I did want to mention, I guess he's on this side for me, depending on how you're looking at the screen. Brian with Flame On has been doing a series, or will be continuing doing a series of interviews with different writers and artists, independent creators, and I was very happy to be able to take part in a discussion of the Barely Danny webcomic series and the writer-creator of that. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun reading, the interview that he had done with Brian and going through those questions and answers. And, of course, just celebrating this really cool web series and this really fun creator and his work. So please check that out. And also check out the further interviews that Brian will be doing coming up soon. And then for my second one, it just started today if you're in the US and have access to HoboMax. It is the exciting Ridley Scott series Raised by Wolves. Not to be confused with the British series from several years ago called Raised by Wolves, or the other American series that was probably several years back before that, also called Raised by Wolves. This is a hardcore post-apocalyptic sci-fi fever dream. It is gorgeous. After having just watched the first pilot episode, the first 3 episodes were released today, and it will be released as a weekly series on HBO Max or Hobo Max. It's absolutely beautiful. It's about 2 androids that are sent out from the atheist faction from Earth to colonize a planet. So they seed it with 6 children and try to raise them. And very quickly things do not go as planned. There's also an opposing faction of I forget what they call them, but they are religious faction. So obviously anti-atheist, who have a teaching against androids. Period. So it's very fascinating, interesting look at culture from like a very far other side of humanity, other side of time kind of situation. But some of the stark imagery, some of the acting is just fantastic. And the design for Mother, before when she's just in plain garb, and then also when she goes full on war android is incredibly cool. So Raised by Wolves available on HBO Max every Thursday.
And it's worth mentioning there is a Comic Book Bears connection, and Billy Brooks, who is a past guest, is headed one of the VFX teams involved in that. So congrats, Billy, on that.
I was so thrilled when he made that public, because I don't think he had for a while until fairly recently, and
yesterday.
Yeah, super. He is so sweet, and I was just like, wow, I've already been excited about this series, and then to see he's doing this. Sorry, very happy about
it's that. So
anyway.
Cool. It's been developed for a while.
Why did I think it was for some reason I thought it was on Peacock.
The Grant Morrison.
I might be confusing with that.
Yeah. Brave New World is on Peacock.
Yeah.
And that one wasn't too bad. It's actually an interesting interpretation and adaptation. Yeah. But I know there's a lot of mixed reviews out there. So
yeah. Well, speaking of mixed reviews from the feed, it looks like there's not a lot of fans of the third episode.
No, and I take that as a fair point, but I still overall just love it. Anyway, it's fine. There's plenty of room for disagreement. We're not trolls.
And there'll be plenty more episodes.
We're a positive fandom. We're all very supportive, and we can critique things and be okay.
Yeah.
Unless you ruin my Sherlock Holmes, in which case, sir, you've destroyed my child.
Brick through the window.
Yeah.
Brick through the window of the publishing house in London.
All right, Brian, what about you? What's your wolf of the week?
Well, Steve was so kind to put that out there. I don't even have to. Actually, he stole both of my potential wolves. So I'm just going to talk about Fortnite again, because why not? But no, Barely Danny. This series I'm doing, he was on my radar from a while ago. I'm so happy he did it. But Bill, you're next. So I quickly borrowed Steve as a co-host because I needed somebody to read the interview.
Yeah.
So just be ready when your life calms down. We're gonna.
Oh, I can tell you right now, there was no way I could have done it. I was at work.
It's okay. It worked out so well.
Awful week. And
we don't have a good name for him, but the creator Barely Danny was so sweet. He loved it. I didn't tell you this yet, Steve. He loved it. He really, really loved it. So I'm thrilled. His work is really cool, and I'm excited to share it with other people. So, but next up, and if you're watching this live, of course, you can see it and tune in on Monday. Andy Mangles is going to talk about how he crews.
Oh, nice.
We're going to talk about the re-release of Stuck Rubber Baby, and we're going to talk about his life and Andy's work as well. I'm going to we try to give enough time. If it's a twofer, we're gonna make sure we talk about Wonder Woman versus the Bionic Woman, and just whatever he wants to talk about. But
awesome.
My woof is Fortnite, because I am a 14-year-old child who likes to play games.
Swear at strangers.
And swear at strangers. Actually, I had a kid jump into my team. I didn't realize, and it was a whole thing. So I just sat there mortified. But the reason this comes up on this show, because normally we don't talk too much about video games, is it's a Marvel-themed season. Basically, they dovetailed from the Thor, Donny Cates comic with Thor becoming the new Herald of Galactus. They dovetailed that series into Fortnite world. And so in game you have comics, you have kind of like the Comixology app. You can flip through the pages, and it's basically Thor kind of finding this rift into the Fortnite world, and then Galactus is going to show up eventually. But because Galactus is going to show up, and because he has such hunger, Thor recruits a bunch of Marvel superheroes to come to the Fortnite world. So this current season has you playing Thor, you can get the Silver Surfer, you can get Iron Man, Storm, Mystique, Captain America has previously been released. You can play all these different Marvel superheroes, previously Deadpool, Cable, Psylocke, So anyway, but they've just, before it's been a little bit here and there, they have completely taken over the season. So it's fun. It's not the new fancy Avengers game that I know a lot of people are playing right now, but I feel like it's conveniently timed to maybe borrow some of that attention. And we're going to get an in-game season event with Galactus, which is going to be amazing because, Galactus, right?
Yeah.
So
the cloud of little munchy things, right?
No fucking clouds. No, thankfully not. But like Fortnite's free to play, so even if you are like a casual gamer, you don't even want to deal with you don't have to worry about that. Just get it. Not on the iPhone or Android, unfortunately, because there's a whole thing. But if you're on a PC, PS4, Xbox, or Switch, you can actually just jump right in and play this for free, and it's tons of fun. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm very, very glad they went Marvel. Some people hate it because they don't like Marvel, but if you like Marvel, you're gonna dig it. So
yeah.
Cool. Okay. My Wolf blah. Sorry, folks, I'm tired. My Wolf of the Week goes to something that is also Hobomax, and I'm talking about the documentary Class Action Park. So, as somebody who grew up in North Jersey, I estimate I went to Action Park somewhere between 15 and 20 times growing up.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, all those
and you're
rides.
Still alive.
All those Aquascoot, Alpine Slide, Roaring Rapids, Kamikaze, Tarzan Swing, Surf Hill. I've experienced all of them. I'm a bit confused about Surf Hill because there were a couple of different incarnations of Surf Hill, but the one that I was remembering, I remember we a few of us who were lifeguards, we went on a Tuesday that we had off. And I went back on Sunday, and between the Tuesday and the Sunday, Surf Hill was gone because so many people had gotten it. I mentioned injury, and again, the name of the documentary is Class Action Park, which is a reference to Action Park in Vernon Valley, New Jersey. That was in operation from the very late 70s into the 90s. It was the most dangerous theme park you ever had. I mean, nothing could ever compare to it. And I thought the film did a very good job of going into that this was a time in American culture that this probably was the only time it could happen because there was a wave of deregulation in the Reagan years that just kept going and going. And it was kind of like total freedom while you were there. Everything that they put across in this documentary was the case. It was like teenagers running everything. Things I forgot. Like I forgot that there were snakes everywhere. I mean, little garter ones, but still there was like, you couldn't walk like 60, 70 feet without at least hearing one, especially on the motor end side. The film is narrated by John Hodgman, who I think is kind of the perfect choice.
I lit up. He is such an important person to me, and the fact that he did that was so good. And the animations,
the cute little those made it like the when you got the road rash from the Alpine Slide when they were describing and they had the little animation.
Iodine and alcohol,
the iodine solution. If you stay inside the circle, you'll get a free prize of some sort. And nobody did it, and when they did, they got a pen or something.
So, Bill, did you actually ever have to go to the medic, or was that a?
I went to. Well, they had it was so dangerous there. They had stations. Like little stations, where you could get Bactine or a Band-Aid or something. But the main one, no. I had friends that went. I had one friend who got particularly hurt in the go-karts. Just scraped up his arm really badly. They also had I remember there was they would also they were like Indian tribes. A lot of Indian tribes, if you killed an animal, you used every part of the animal. You used the bones, you used the fur, you used everything. Action Park was a lot like that. If they had leftover wood, they would just make something of it, and they made a wood frame maze. And this was like Splinter City. You wouldn't even touch anything and get a splinter. It was the wood was so rough. The one that I love, the kamikaze. The kamikaze was so much fun. That you're scared to death the first time you do it, but after you did it once, you knew what you were in for. And I think the documentary did a pretty good job of expressing like how much fun some of this stuff was. It was insane, but it was a really good time. But it also balanced that out with some very dark developments that happened with and didn't sugarcoat that. And it still is in operation. Like pre-COVID, it was still in operation as Mountain Creek, just like any other water park. I did go like about, I want to say 10 years ago, and that was kind of disappointing. How pacified the place was, but at least you wouldn't come out of there with a dislocated arm or something.
So like in West Palm, we had the rapids, and it was as close as you can get without all of the excess. Like they had the water slides, they had go-karts, but what they did not have is a major highway running between them. That was mind-blowing.
Right in the middle.
And then that loop-de-loop, what was the loop called? The original...
The Cannonball Loop.
The Cannonball Loop.
Did you ever do that?
Once.
Oh my God.
And when I came out of it, I like slammed into a person.
I just like how that in the animation they're opening up the hatch on the top, and it's nothing but like blood and
everything they talked about in that documentary was true. The water was disgusting over in the kayak area. I mean, it was you just did not want to go. The water was freezing at the Tarzan swing pool and also the kamikaze when you came out of that. One thing I wish they got into, and this is what I was talking about with the beer, was they had Old World Brewery, beer brewed on the premises. This stuff must have been like 23, 24%. I mean, you just got hammered from it.
Wow.
And it was like, it tasted awful, but when you're 18 years old and you're not carded, you're going to have a good time. And one thing that we did after you got used to the place was we always left the wave pool till the end. Because, apart from how dangerous it was, you were so goddamn tired after you were finished with that. And it's, to this day, I can't conceive of a wave pool that was more violent.
It looked exhausting.
And I was a lifeguard,
Jeez.
I couldn't imagine.
I just don't.
Oh my God.
The only wave pool that I was ever in was I think it was Typhoon Lagoon in Orlando at the Disney. But that was pretty exhausting, even though it was pretty tame compared to what I was watching in the action park thing, where like they wouldn't even have real time to relax. No. Like it was just sort of like, okay, now here's 10-foot waves. Okay, now here's like 4-foot waves. And now here's 10-foot waves.
Keep in mind, you also had a lot of non-swimmers. A lot of non-swimmers.
What was the abbreviation that they put on your wrist?
Can't
fucking swim.
Can't fucking swim.
CFS. Yeah, can't fucking swim. Yeah.
I love that. Like, I mean, who does that? Like, my God.
I mean, the Vernon Valley was like not exactly close to me. It was still like about a 40-minute drive. But I did know 2 people who worked there, and they had stories.
Oh,
it was like. It was the 80s,
that nasty sex party hut that they had with the employees at the end. I mean, that's great.
We have a very special commenter guest. I have to share. Caleb's on. He couldn't be here in person because he's all busy lawyering up, But he's very excited that he was finished with school stuff. And this was the first thing he saw on his feed, so we miss you too, Caleb.
Oh, we miss you.
Did you see Caleb's new haircut?
No.
Oh, it's very Malcolm X.
Did he get it buzz?
Yeah, I'm sure he'll send it after we send it. So
we'll see all the pictures.
Yeah. All right, we've hit the 11 o'clock mark. My God, we had like a 90-minute episode. We had
Perfect.
a framed 90-minute.
Perfect.
Awesome. So again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you want to listen to us, please download us through iTunes. Listen to us through Stitcher Radio. In regards to iTunes, please make sure you leave a review. Those are very important. Also, we have our YouTube channel. Please leave comments on the YouTube channel as well so that we have increased visibility. Until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a wolf and an explosion if you're listening. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Boom.